This morning we filed a lawsuit on behalf of Joel Paez and Belkis Terán concerning the death of Manuel Paez Terán. Based on prior events in this case, we anticipated there'd be a lot of questions, and I hope this would be the easiest way to answer them. My partner Brian Spears is going to speak briefly, then I'll describe the lawsuit in some detail, and you'll hear from both parents.
Thank you, everyone. My name is Brian Spears. I'm one of the attorneys representing the family of Manuel Paez Terán. We're here today because the parents of Manuel Paez Terán are suing the men we believe responsible for the death of their son. Manuel Paez Terán, a 26-year-old former University of Florida honors student, was killed on January 18th, 2023. We allege in this lawsuit that the raid organized by the Georgia Bureau of Investigation caused their death. Manuel's death and their bullet-ridden body should shock every fair-minded person in this country. Their death was followed by an autopsy, the autopsy which we released in March of 2023. The results of that autopsy performed on their body proved that when Paez Terán refused to leave the forest that they were defending and trying to save from destruction, their body was riddled by multiple gunshot wounds. Manuel was shot in the head, through their eye, shot in their upper chest, shot in the stomach, shot in both arms and both legs and their feet. And in particular, the autopsy showed that Manuel's hands were shot through the back of their hand, through their palm, as their palm faced their body. Manuel was shot up to 14 times, resulting in 57 independent and separate gunshot wounds. And for the past 2 years, our clients prayed to know the truth about what had happened and why. Why was this organized the way in which it was done? And why was Manuel confronted by officers primed with guns drawn to prevent Manuel from camping in a public park? Despite the family's prayers, no independent investigation was done. The Georgia Bureau of Investigation decided that not only did they oversee this operation, but decided that they would be the ones who would control the investigation. They controlled that investigation, and even until this day, they have refused to release to the parents of Manuel the results of that investigation. But our clients refuse to allow the Georgia Bureau of Investigation to stand in the way of justice for their son. The story of Manuel's death is still being written. The objective of this lawsuit is to learn the truth about who planned the raid and to hold them responsible. My partner, Jeff, will now give you more details about the specifics of the lawsuit.
All right. Just to provide some context to all of this. So, for too long, everyone who has been opposed to Cop City, in particular anyone who was in the forest, has been vilified as a domestic terrorist. The criminal acts, vandalism generally, of a few have been used to demonize those who hold certain political beliefs. This demonization was open and obvious and broadcast and repeated by the media. It's in the RICO indictment. It's in the domestic terrorism charges, where we saw domestic terrorism charges for things like people like sleeping in a hammock. So that is the context in which this arose. The first claim we've brought, and let me be clear, we still don't know exactly what happened in the moments leading up to Manuel's death. But we do know what happened before it. The facts are Manuel was camped in a public park that was open to the public, that had not been closed, that was not subject to any park closure order. There was no trespassing signs, and law enforcement went into that public space that had been used for months as a meeting ground, as a community ground, as a central place for the political opposition to Cop City. And they went in with an order to arrest anyone inside that park. The presence in that park was legal. You can't go into a public space and arrest someone for being there. That's the basis of the Fourth Amendment false arrest claim that we've brought. The First Amendment claim is based on the same, which is, why would you go into a public space and arrest someone who is not breaking a law where the space is open to the public and has been historically used for First Amendment purposes? And the obvious answer that we have come to is that it was retaliation for engaging in political speech that was disfavored by law enforcement. The third claim we've brought is for excessive force. It is not related to the shooting itself. It's related to shooting pepper balls into a tent of a person who is lawfully occupying public land and not violating any law. Filling a tent with pepper spray in an enclosed area. How many seconds do you have to get to the zipper of a tent, to open it, to escape, before you can't find that zipper because you're overwhelmed by burning eyes, burning nose, inability to breathe? If that is how this case has unfolded, would we be questioning whether law enforcement was justified in that use of force? Because that conduct is the same no matter what happened next. We don't know what happened after that. We don't know because the GBI investigated itself. There are no other non-law enforcement witnesses. There are no body cameras. There are no recordings. Until and unless we can reconstruct this and disprove some course part of that story, we will always have questions. And through this litigation, we hope to arrive at some of those answers. But regardless of those answers, even if law enforcement did provoke a response, the question is, what happened before that? Was this motivated by retaliation? Was this order to clear this public space owned by DeKalb County that was not the site of the construction? I think there's been some confusion about that, and that confusion is also reflected in the current RICO indictment that does not define what public space they're talking about. This was a public forest, not the site of the construction, and so they went in there and they cleared it out. No warning, you're under arrest. So that, to us, is unacceptable. And that is the basis of the claims in this lawsuit. The three defendants are a GBI officer who was the lead planner of the operation, the officer who fired the pepper balls that was part of that team, and the leader of that team who gave the order to fire the pepper balls. We have not sued the other officers who discharged their weapons because, frankly, they were placed in just as dangerous of a position as everyone else with how this was planned and carried out. They were put in a terrible position, and just as Manuel was. And so today, I know that some of you have tours of the new training center. I hope that you'll ask how they intend to change policing, if this is just designed to lock more people up in the Fulton County Jail and the Georgia prisons, or if there's some meaningful change that is coming through all this, because we have not seen any change. We have just seen more draconian enforcement. And I hope that you will ensure that the public knows that that is what is coming, if it is what is coming, or to give the public an opportunity to speak out against it. Ms. Terán, Manuel's mother, will speak now. and then we'll hear from Joelle.
My name is Belkis Terán. I'm the mother of Manuel Esteban Paez Terán, called Tortuguita. Tort. Here we are again seeking justice for my child, Manuel. This name Manuel, it means God with us. Emmanuel. This time of the year, we say this name, Emmanuel. For me, Manuel. Manny, as we call them. He was shot 13, even 14 times with bullets by the police, tearing my child's flesh, creating 57 wounds. Tears in the skin. Why? Why this happened? I deserve answers. I deserve a proper investigation. He was in a public park during open hours. He was not trespassing. It was not illegal to camp there. So, why so much destruction and violence? That is my question. Horrible crime. Horrible crime. Camping in a park. Manuel was shot 14 times by the police. Sitting, legs crossed, hands up. The autopsy shows this. Every morning, Manuel meditated. For him, then, it was sacred to be in the forest. Through meditation, he was getting close to God. And to be camping is to be in a sacred place. After they meditated in the morning, he liked to have a coffee. He did not get that coffee that day. Why did this happen to my child? Though now we know, it did not just happen to my child. It did not just happen to my child. It will continue to happen if we don't understand why. This violence is happening to a community. This destruction is happening to our rights. Our rights to oppose wrong decisions. Stand up for the forest, or even just meditate in the forest. Manuel is all of our children. Emmanuel. The ones who dream of connection with nature. The ones who care for their communities. I beg the authorities to help me to understand this situation. To have answer for this horrible crime that is bigger than just a problem here in Atlanta, Georgia. Why something simple like being in a tent has this horrible response from authorities? 13 or 14 bullets into the flesh of my child by the police. Who gave the order? I like to know. Since the beginning I've been asking that. Who gave the order? I beg the authorities to understand the events that leads to the murder of my child. 57 wounds. Why? Why? Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Joel Paez, and I want to point out that I've been working almost 25 years on teaching about nonviolence. I've been working for the Salvation Army since 2005, teaching male perpetrators of domestic violence how to have a relationship free of violence. That's my job. "23 months ago, a Chicago police officer knocked on my residence in Chicago to inform me about something terrible happened to my child, Manuel Esteban Paez Terán. He told me I must call Atlanta authorities about it. Doing this, the officer pointed out his corporal camera, his body camera, while saying this conversation is recorded. It's a paradox. We don't know what really happened the morning we lost our child. Nothing was recorded. After 23 months, 2 years on next January 2025, no one from authorities has approached family, talked, or formally informed our attorneys about the investigation. Family or attorneys has not received any proof of what happened that morning in January 2022. The same day, and even before parents were informed about Manuel's physical murder, most important Georgia authorities, including Georgia governor, Atlanta mayor, Atlanta chief of police, Georgia Bureau of Investigation, with the support of the press, intended the moral assassination of Manuel Tortuguita Paez Terán. A moral assassination is intended to influence public opinion. A moral assassination becomes a justification for an arrest. A moral assassination becomes a justification of a physical disappearance, and ultimately a justification for murder on the eyes of the public opinion. This was attempted against my child as well. This is a typical maneuver from the dictatorship governments like in Venezuela, like Cuba or Nicaragua. The good news is that Manuel's second murder was unsuccessful. The life of Manuel is known as an example for thousands and millions of people around the world who are defending the environment. Manuel was a forest defender. Forest defenders are not terrorists. He was a young man who cared for all others, especially those in need. He will stop in the middle of the street to give $100 to someone who was homeless. He was so worried about the whole humanity. Sadly, Manny was the first environmentalist to give his life for his ideals in the United States of America. He was able to accomplish so many things in the short life, guided by his ideas of love, passion, and determination. We are here to make sure that authorities are accountable for this horrible abuse of power against Manuel Tortuguita Paez Terán. We are here after the impossible to know what really happened. Our attorneys have worked so much, but they were constantly diverted by authorities and legal system. Several times, legal loops have been used during these 23 months. We are here to use the resources still provided by the law. Are we supposed to believe what authorities say while there is a constant secrecy and lack of transparency? Are we supposed to believe that an officer was not hit by friendly fire, as the only recording made by Atlanta Police Corporal audio showed us? Are we supposed to believe what the special prosecutor, Mr. Christensen, said to me? Are we supposed to believe him that contradictory reports between perpetrators of the assassination is normal? Are we supposed to believe that written report from officers that perpetrated the murder is state? Please, check the report, presented several days and several weeks after. They clearly show a brainwash process. I wonder how this influenced the final result of Manny receiving 57 wounds on his body while his hands were raised. Are we supposed to believe that this case is closed according to so-called independent prosecution and nothing of this is reported, of this report was handed to our attorneys? You know the answer, right? No, no, and no. We do not believe them. I'm a follower of Jesus Christ. We celebrate in Christmas that God himself was among us. Jesus teach me about love and forgiveness. I understand from his teaching I must forgive physical perpetrator of Manuel's assassination. However, now more than ever, I understand what Jesus says. Do not worry about your life, what you're gonna eat, what you're gonna drink, but seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness. Myself, I should live my life looking for justice against any economic and political system of power that plan, perpetrate, cover up, and attempted the morally murder of Manuel Tortuguita Paez Terán, and against a system that continues prosecuting several forest defenders in the United States. Forest defenders are not terrorists. They are, and my child was, individuals' concerns against the environmental injustice. They are peacefully using the civil liberties rights. They are young people that want what is righteousness.
We'll take a couple questions. I wanted to point out too this map here, which shows Entrenchment Creek Park, the location of the shooting, and then obviously there's a creek going down the middle. To the east of that creek, this is public property. To the west, this is the city of Atlanta-owned property. The sweep through the forest took place here. And again, that park was never closed until March, when the DeKalb County CEO entered an executive order closing it. At the point when Paez was in when Manuel was in the forest, that park was open. We also have a picture of the tent here. You can see how small it is. You can see the bullet holes in it. Obviously, a confined space like this being filled with pepper balls presents a tremendous risk, of serious bodily harm and death, of being trapped in a tent like that is being filled with pepper spray. So we'll do a couple questions, but I think we've said most of what we can say at this point. But
was the decision not to name the officers that fired the bullets in the indictment related to the fact that they were in charge last year by the independent prosecutor? Or
No. That's prosecutors using a totally different standard of criminal acts and beyond a reasonable doubt. Our decision is independent of that.
There's two items that at least from your conflicts. I was hoping to get some clarity. Mr. Spears said you're still looking into who exactly planned the raid. In your comments, Mr. Flipwitz, you said the lead planner is named in the lawsuit. Does that mean you're looking for additional people to plan? And can we see civil action against them, or do we know who planned? Just some clarity.
We want to understand how the decision-making process was made. We know who drew up the plan and who was responsible for that aspect of it. But when we're looking at retaliation on this scale, I think everyone should be curious about like how big of a decision was this, who was involved in it. Of course, we want to know that, but yeah.
Does that mean more civil action against more people potentially?
I don't know.
And then just one last question. Without any body camera, some of this land has been changed or cleared.
Sure.
You say you're trying to learn what happened in those moments leading up to this. Do you think that ever can be?
Sometimes it can be, sometimes it can't be. You know, if you find something that contradicts the scientific evidence that contradicts a story, that would be a strong indication that something is amiss. But if we don't ever find that, and we don't have forensic evidence that confirms beyond, you know, a story, then there's always going to be questions, and there's always going to be. This is why we have body cams. I mean, this is why we all, as a society, collectively, generally agreed, police need body cameras, so that we don't have this situation. And yet, here we are again.
Can you talk a little bit about his hands being up? I know his mother, she wants to add to it as well with you. Can you talk a little bit about the proof that you have that and how that led to this lawsuit?
That has nothing to do with this lawsuit. First, the position of the hands. We're not trying to reconstruct the scene. We can't reconstruct the scene. That was based on an autopsy that was done that we released over a year ago. That concluded that based on the wounds, the position of the bullet holes on the hands, that it was likely that the hands were raised. But that doesn't tell us anything. That doesn't refute any story. That doesn't give us anything. And that has nothing to do with a lawsuit. The lawsuit is about what happened before that happened and how this event, you know, transpired such that, you know, this was a terrible situation for everyone involved. You know, the other officers who are there are following their orders, and it was a dangerous situation, and it was a dangerous situation that was started because they were trying to clear out a peaceful protester from a public place because they didn't like what message they were putting out.
Can you explain what you learned in this intervening almost 2 years that made you want to file this suit? Because I agree with you, you know, noting as many times as both of y'all did where this all happened, and the fact that the state has consistently, seemingly willfully, gotten that fact wrong, where this all happened, is important. But we knew that 2 years ago. So I'm wondering what have you learned that's new that made you want to do this now?
I'm not going to get into our thought processes.
No, the facts. I'm just the facts. What are the new facts that?
And they're in the complaint. I mean, I'm just not going to talk about our deliberations and assessment of a civil case.
Jeff?
Yeah.
I understand the lawsuit focuses on the context that led up to the shooting itself, and creating a dangerous situation, essentially, is what you're saying. Do you have a position on the actual exchange of the gunfire itself?
My position is we don't know.
You don't know?
We don't know.
Stop.
Full stop. We know what we've been told. We don't have conclusive proof of that, one way or the other.
Including the ballistics?
Including the ballistics. Again, I'm not going to get into. Our position at this point is that we don't know.
In the RICO case, the prosecutors did introduce Manuel's diary. What was your reaction to that, and the fact that prosecutors are still basically prosecuting Manuel's thoughts?
Yeah, I thought that was outrageous. It's not common to attach the exhibit to a motion in limine and file that exhibit with the court. That was an obvious, deliberate decision to get that into the public record. And I don't know what purpose that would be to get that into the public record other than to try to drag down his character. All right, one more.
What is your goal on this lawsuit? Are you expecting that it'll force for you guys to get the information, more of the information that you guys say that you need?
Well, yeah, of course, that's the goal of the lawsuit. I mean, our goal is to get the information for the family to understand what happened, and if someone is liable for either what happened pre-death or responsible for setting off this catastrophic series of events to hold that person liable. It's the same as every other lawsuit.
And may I ask some other real quickly? You mentioned about the hands me up. Can you talk a little bit about how that was for you? If you can come to how that was for you when you found out about that? She mentioned that. I just wanted her to give her opportunity to expand on it.
Yeah, we've already covered that many times in the past. It's really not part of this lawsuit. I don't really want to have our clients commenting any more on the facts than they have.
On topic,
Last one.
It's been announced for some time, or known for some time, that public safety would be moving in this month to that facility. You alluded to the tour they're having today.
Right.
Did you plan the filing and announcement of this lawsuit to coincide with that, to keep Manuel's name in the headlines?
No, we had no idea about that. I found out about that, I think, today. So.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, everybody.